So thanks so much for joining us. Welcome to Via Voices, and let's pay a visit today to Friendship Park. I'm going to begin with a little bit of a virtual tour. Many of you, I know, most of you perhaps have been to Friendship Park, but just in case there are any folks who are unfamiliar with the ground, the lay of the land down there, I want to just take you down to see what we're talking about when we talk about the birthplace of the border. This is at the westernmost end of the US-Mexico border. It's about 6.5 miles to the west of the San Ysidro port of entry, which, as many of you know, is the busiest land border crossing in the world. And on the ground at Friendship Park is a space that was designed to be a place of binational and cross-cultural encounter. You can see on this map that the patterns of development on the two sides of the border have evolved very, very differently across many years. On the Mexican side of the border, of course, the city of Tijuana grew right up and up against the border. And so you see the urban neighborhood of Playas de Tijuana with houses built up right against the wall, the historic Tijuana bull ring. And as we draw in even closer, you can see the row of restaurants overlooking the beach. And many of you have been in those restaurants and been to this location and know what a vital and vibrant, colorful place it is on the Mexican side of the wall. I want to just say draw a little bit of a contrast between the Mexican side, which is filled, as I mentioned, with life and color and food and music and culture and all kinds of fun, a perpetual fiesta on the Mexican side. I want to draw a contrast to what experience is like on the US side of the park. As you can see, this location has been double walled, which is to say that there are two border walls that define a no man's land between the two walls. Just a brief word of history here so you can understand how it came to be that Friendship Park came to be walled off on the US side. You know, it's really been a 3 decades long campaign under both Democratic and Republican administrations to harden the US-Mexico border. And that effort really began with real earnest under the presidency of Bill Clinton. And the Clinton administration began by hardening the border at ports of entry to prevent unauthorized crossings at these urban crossings, San Diego, Tijuana, El Paso, Juarez, all the way to Bronzeville, Matamoros. The idea was that to harden the border between the ports of entry to discourage unauthorized crossings with the idea that traffic should be channeled through those ports of entry. We won't go into the long history of that policy, but suffice it to say that people desiring entry to the United States have proven far more determined and desperate and ingenious in securing entry to the United States and have gone to desperate measures, including hiking out through the mountains of California, the deserts of Arizona, even at the risk of their own lives. Nonetheless, presidents on both parties continued this policy of hardening the border between the ports of entry. That included the San Diego sector of US Border Patrol, which is the 60 westernmost miles of the border. But for the longest time, the federal government had not been able to build a second wall, a double wall here at this location. And that's because the surrounding area, as you can see on the United States side of the wall, had never been developed. It's an ecological preserve called the Tijuana Estuary, and also within it is the bounds of California's Borderfield State Park. And so for a variety of reasons, the land was owned by the state of California, and there were all kinds of environmental regulations that governed the use of the land. The federal government had not been able to build a double wall at this location until after 9/11, when the politics really changed dramatically. As you all remember, post 9/11, everything and under the sun was considered a matter of national security. And with the creation of the Department of Homeland Security, the US Congress ceded to the executive branch an extraordinary authority to build walls along the US-Mexico border. In 2005, Congress passed the Real ID Act, and they attached a rider to that piece of legislation that afforded the Secretary of Homeland Security the authority to waive any and all laws deemed necessary to expedite the construction of border wall. And in fact, the Department of Homeland Security has waived dozens and dozens of laws on dozens and dozens of occasions to build border wall where otherwise they would not be able to. And that's how this last westernmost stretch of the border here at San Diego Tijuana came to be double walled. Beginning in 2008, the federal government began to extend the double wall along this coastal stretch or toward the coast here near Friendship Park. The federal government took the land by eminent domain from the state of California. And then across the years 2008, 9, 10, and 11, built these double walls, which you can see right here. You can see the historic Tijuana Lighthouse, and we'll go right down on the ground here in just a minute. But just so you can see from the aerial view, you can see how this double wall works. The first border wall is exactly on the international boundary, defines the international boundary or demarcates the international boundary. The second wall is about 90 feet to the north and creates this no man's land for San Diego Border Patrol. They can control who goes in, and they can arrest people who go in for trespassing or apprehend people who may cross from the Mexican side without authorization. And they have the place supremely well controlled. They've got cameras and ground sensors and motion detectors and infrared. The place is entirely tricked out. And you can see if somebody were to jump the wall here near Friendship Park, the first wall, they would be apprehended before they could hardly even get to the second wall, because on either side of that second wall is a paved high-speed patrol road. I've seen Border Patrol cars traveling 70, 80 miles an hour on that high-speed road. So if somebody jumps into this no man's land from the Mexican side, a Border Patrol agent can speed to get to them before they're able to enter the United States or clear the second wall. So it really is one of the most highly controlled parts of the border. It's very difficult to cross here without authorization. The only time that really any significant numbers of people would try to cross at this location when we have heavy coastal fog, which of course makes it harder to detect unauthorized crossings. But with the walling off of Friendship Park in the years, with the construction of this second wall, the waiving of laws, the seizing of land from the state of California, and the construction of double walls, the experience on the US side of Friendship Park, which had been a meeting place for generations, and about which I'll say more in a minute, the experience on the US side was just dramatically changed. I've talked to old timers in San Diego who remember, riding down to Monument Mesa in their bikes and dragging their bikes across a chain fence and riding around Tijuana and buying tacos and then returning to San Diego at the end of the afternoon. But now if you go to Friendship Park on the US side, I'll give you a ground's eye view so you can see what you encounter. It's the same beautiful sight as ever overlooking the Pacific Ocean. But as you approach this barrier, you're approaching federal property line. And here you can see the second wall. That second wall has a gate in it. And through several years of conversation with San Diego Border Patrol, our Friends of Friendship Park Coalition advocated that San Diego Border Patrol should establish regular hours of visitation, or regular hours when people would be able to visit at Friendship Park. And in 2011, San Diego Border Patrol committed to opening the park on Saturdays and Sundays, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. You can see the sign here says maximum occupancy 25. They've since reduced that number to 10, which is a terrible reduction of access to the public. But at least for many years, there has been regular access Saturdays and Sundays, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., where Border Patrol officials will open this gate, allowing the people enter inside the park, get up right against that primary border wall, and visit with family and friends on the US side. I just want to share a couple of quick stories so that you can understand the importance of this binational meeting place to thousands of families. The families that come to be reunited at Friendship Park, almost without exception, are not undocumented in the United States. If you're undocumented, we get lots of inquiries from people, and we can't, in good honesty or good conscience, encourage them to visit, because the place is, of course, entirely, swarming with Border Patrol agents. The vast majority of families that visited the park are trapped in a particular circumstance where they have members in the United States, legally residing in the United States, but who have some kind of a status that prevents them from leaving the country. So maybe they have DACA, they're dreamers. Maybe they have a legal permanent residence, but they fear that if they leave the country, they may jeopardize their standing. Maybe they have an immigration case pending before the courts for themselves or a family member. And likewise, they feel that if there's a pattern of them entering and exiting the country, that may compromise their immigration case. Or they may be on parole, very common experience. Same one I just had this last Sunday. People on parole are told by their judge, 5 years parole. If you leave the country, you violate the terms of your parole, we'll throw you back in jail. So all these people, for all these reasons, are trapped in the United States. And if people like these have family members in Mexico who can't get a visa to come to the United States, then Friendship Park becomes the only place in the world that they can see their loved ones. There's a handful of stories I could tell, but I'll just share a couple. This is a glimpse of what it's like for a family to visit at Friendship Park. Many families travel even up to thousands of miles from both countries to see their loved ones. Let me get the sound going here. And just a tiny glimpse of one family reunion at Friendship Park.
May the Holy Spirit in whom all things are possible.
Then it became a lot.
To create a relationship, at least a work relationship with him, which at this point I think is a very good one. But the friendship circle is located within the United States. So all the laws apply. If I see something that makes me believe that the person may be illegal in the country, I will arrest the person and I will take him to the station to get it processed.
We're gathering at this historic location to remind ourselves of deeper truths, that we're friends, that we are not enemies, that we're neighbors.
When I ask families or other visitors, I say, how'd your visit go? They're very, very sad to be separated from their loved ones, but they're also incredibly grateful and thankful to have had the chance. Families haven't seen each other 10, 15, 20 years. Families travel long distance, thousands of miles in each country just for a one-time reunion.
¿Está bien?
Sí, me dijo sí. Yo quiero abrazar.
Pues yo también, como si quisieras.
Every time I go there is a new experience. They teach me something new. Endurance, resistance, happiness, sadness.
Since the election of Donald Trump, fewer people in the last several months have come to the U.S. side of Friendship Park. Dramatic.
And here's another quick interview with a young woman who came to Friendship Park just a few years ago. And her story I thought was really quite typical of the thousands of families that visit the park each year.
Hi, we're here at Friendship Park with Maria, who's come for the first time and to visit with her family. Maria, can you tell us where you're from and why you're here today?
I'm from Lancaster, California, and I'm here for the first time to be able to have the opportunity to see my mom after 3 long years that I haven't seen her. The only way I had seen her was through pictures, and this is the first time I can actually see her face to face, although there's of course that fence dividing us, and I was able to touch her fingers. For me it was very emotional. It's very hard to explain all the emotions that were happening. Happy to see her, but at the same time saddened to see that there's a wall, there's this fence dividing our families, and it's very painful at the same time.
And tell me your mother's name.
My mother's name is Maria Isabel Zavala Bernal.
And you had your brother was visiting with you too?
Yes, and my little brother's actually with her. He is a U.S. citizen, and his name is Guillermo Daniel Baraja Zavala, and he's there supporting my mom, being with my mom, because also since my mom has, like, her leg is broken, like it's been very swollen and it's very painful for her.
Yeah.
But he's there with her. I told her to take care of her and vice versa.
Yeah. And so you're here also with supporting the Dreamers today, is that right?
Yes, I am a dreamer as well. And I'm here with my family and friends who are supporting us, and also my older brother who's over there. Yeah. He's the one I stayed with when my mom had to leave.
So there you have another glimpse of just the kind of family that depends on Friendship Park for these family reunions. And that, I hope, explains or gives some insight into why so many of us have fought so hard for so long to ensure that there is regular and routine and public access on the US side of the park. There are several other such stories on our website, friendshippark.org, and I'll encourage you to browse and just hear some of the remarkable stories of people who have gone through such extraordinary lengths to be reunited with their loved ones at this historic location. We're going to go down on the ground now to visit with friends Dan Watman and Robert Vivar, friends of our Friendship Park Coalition. And just one last time, reorient you to the space, we're going to be dropping down onto the Mexican side of the park, which, while you saw how dark and dreary and kind of foreboding the US side is, if you've ever been to the Mexican side of Friendship Park, you know that it's a very different experience. On the street, on the Mexican side, the park is filled with color and life and energy. And at the center of the park stands this historic monument. This monument that stands at the very center of Friendship Park was in fact the original boundary marker established between the United States and Mexico. At the end of the US-Mexico War, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo had to, of course, create a new international boundary. And of course, on the Texas border, there was the Rio Grande River, the Rio Bravo, as it's called in Mexico. And there was a natural reason for a border there in some fashion. But west of El Paso, Juarez, there was simply nothing, and they had to create a border out of thin air, or they had to draw a border on the ground. The way they did that was by placing monuments at intervals along the length of that border. And the original Boundary Commission, which first met in 1850, met at this very location and established a monument right where that monument is today, which is why some people call it the birthplace of the border. In the 1890s, another binational commission with better cartographic instruments redrew that boundary, and this time they worked from east to west. They started at El Paso Juarez, the mouth of the Rio Grande River, and they worked to the west, and they placed 258 monuments and finished at this location, which is why the monument there is now denoted as monument number 258. And for that reason, many people don't recognize that it was in fact the first monument, the original boundary marker, and the very first monument put in place. So just to say that the changes on site at this monument across generations have been remarkable, but it's really only in the last few years that there has been this effort to effectively wall off Friendship Park from the public in both sides. And let me just give you an idea of what kind of changes have been seen on the ground at this location. And then we'll go down and visit with Dan Watman, who's on site at that monument as we speak. Here you can see the original boundary marker, first drawn in 1852. And by the end of the 19th century, that monument had actually been whittled down. Souvenir takers liked it, and they chipped away at it so much that when they replaced it in the 1890s, the first thing that they did was they built a fence around this monument to protect the monument from souvenir hunters. I like to tell people the first fence ever built on the US-Mexico border was to protect a monument. As late as the 1970s, there was just barbed wire on the border between, and the monument was still, as you can see, designed to be visited by people in both countries, very much accessible, with just barbed wire separating the two locations or the two sides of the border. First Lady Pat Nixon inaugurated the surrounding area in 1971. We'll say another word about that. But all the way through the 1980s and 1990s and into the early 2000s, it was easy for people to gather at Friendship Park. There were binational yoga classes and binational religious ceremonies. An annual La Posada Sin Fronteras has been going for over 25 years. And also importantly, you can see how accessible the place was for families who could meet up on the beach and share a meal, or could touch fingertips and embrace through the fence up on top of the mesa. So it was really only in the last 12 years that we've had this arrangement enforced by the Department of Homeland Security that has kept people at a distance on the beach, that has forced families to visit by touching fingertips through this thick metal mesh near the monument, and that has really restricted public access to the historic location. So when we talk about creating a binational park, as we will talk about at the end of today's presentation. This is not a radical or novel idea. It's really an idea of restoring a vision that has been in long standing. We're talking about recreating this as the binational place that it was intended to be. I hope that quick whirlwind overview will help you understand a little bit about the context of Friendship Park. And I now want to go down on the ground and visit with our friends Dan Watman and Robert Vivar, who are on site, so that you can see from a close-up perspective what it looks like on the ground on the Mexican side. We'll go first to Dan Watman.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Like John mentioned, I'm here at Friendship Park, and you can get kind of a close-up look here at what John was talking about with the two walls. This is the primary fence. This is technically divides Mexico and the United States. And if you can see through the little holes there, you can see maybe make out the second wall either through my camera or through Aida's. I don't know if anybody can see Aida's camera as well. And so we consider
Dan,
we'd
Dan,
like to have this.
Dan, I'm going to ask Aida to flip her camera, I think, or let me just, add her as well. We can see which one gives us a better view. I'm going to add Aida's camera.
Cool.
Aida, I think
we might even have 3 cameras going here.
Aida needs to turn her camera sideways, please, and then we'll be good.
Oh, I think she's got it.
It is?
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
for some reason, we have a flipped view for you, Aida, so I'm going to go back to Dan's camera.
So, yeah, so when Pat Nixon came in 1971, like John mentioned, there was just a little barbed wire fence here.
Dan, we're getting an echo, so you or Aida need to silence your phones.
Okay. How's that now?
That's better, thank you.
Better? Okay. Yeah, and it was just a barbed wire fence in 1971 when the park was inaugurated, when Pat Nixon came, and she actually had her Secret Service cut that barbed wire so that she could greet the hundreds of people that were here to greet her on the Mexican side. And she famously said when she left something like, "There shouldn't be a wall between friends." So with the Friends of Friendship Park, we've tried to maintain that spirit as best as we can. And despite all the walls coming in, the park was closed completely in 2009. It went from a chain link fence that was here and no secondary wall to having the secondary wall, and then eventually they replaced the chain link fence with this tall wall with the mesh by 2012, at which point they started allowing the public to come back in the hours that John mentioned, from 10 to 2 on Saturdays and Sundays. So in our struggle to try and create or realize what the original vision of this park was, to have a truly international binational park, we kind of think of the park as 3 spaces or 3 spots of encounter. One is the monument that John has talked about quite a bit, and it actually, according to this monument, is the actual. I'm actually right at the official border. My left foot's in Mexico and my right foot's in the United States, and this is. And the monument is actually registered as an official landmark in the United States Register of historical landmarks. And so, and kind of ironic, because you can't get to it unless you come to Mexico. And when the park is open, you can actually come up to the fence and see it through this mesh. That's about as close as you can get if you're in the United States. So that's kind of and the monument is kind of the center of Friendship Park. So we think of that as one point of encounter. The other point of encounter is the Binational Friendship Garden of native plants, which we'll get a chance to look at a little bit later. And the other point of encounter, which was a place where people could meet all the way until 2009. They started prohibiting people to come up to the primary barrier on the fence back in 2009 and to 2008. And that is the third spot on the beach. So I think from here, I can turn it over to Robert, my colleague, who can talk more about the beach. Or I don't know if John wants to say something before that.
Yeah, nope, that's great, Dan. Thanks so much. And let's go on down to Robert on the beach.
Hola, amigos. Glad you're all joining us out here today. It's a beautiful day here at Playas de Tijuana, right on the beach, right across this ugly border wall. Of course, we have Imperial Beach. And I'm going to go ahead and turn my camera around so that you can have a little bit better view of our experience out here on the Mexican side of this beautiful beach. Okay, there we go. Today, of course, being a weekday, there's not a whole lot of activity as usually on the weekends. As I swing around, you can see some of the buildings. And of course, that is the boardwalk that runs along the side of Playa de Tijuana, where we have shops, restaurants, a few nightclubs, a whole lot of activities for people to enjoy. That's why it's very important for us to consider building that fully binational park so that our friends from both sides of the country, both sides of the border, can enjoy this beautiful beach on both sides of this wall. And what we're coming up on right now is the Playas de Tijuana mural project, which was a project which was part of the UC Davis Humanizing Deportation, which consists of over 240 digital narratives on different aspects of people being affected by the broken immigration system. And the portraits that we have here are part of our childhood arrival connection. Childhood arrival, people say, well, what's childhood arrival? These are people that were taken to the US at a very young age, lived most of their life in the United States, and at one point were deported. Some were returned on their own, and others, as we have a couple here on this mural, remain without status in the United States. The first person that we see on the mural is a university graduate. Then we have a deported mom of US citizen children, a deported veteran, another deported mom of US citizen children. And we have another young lady who is a dreamer. She just recently was able to change her status to legal permanent resident. And she's a UCLA graduate scholar. Next to her is another gentleman from UC Davis who at one point was deported, was able to return legally to the US. And then our friend Isaac, who just recently lost both his mom and dad to COVID in San Diego. And of course, because of his deportation, was not able to be with them in their final days and to attend their burial. One of the things that we like to mention about this border wall, especially here in Playas de Tijuana, is how we want to erase the border through art. And some of you folks that are familiar with Playas de Tijuana border wall can remember that a few years ago, a good friend of ours, the daughter of our own Maria Teresa, Ana Teresa Fernandez, who is an artist, erased the wall. She had a great idea of painting a side of the wall a shade of blue. Then when you looked at the wall at a distance, it looked like there was no wall. All you could see is the sky through the bollard poles. And that kind of led to other murals being painted and turned this border into the Brotherhood mural, El Mural de la Hermandad, which of course world famous Enrique Chu has painted several murals throughout the whole border wall. And of course, that along with many other organizations. We consider Friendship Park very important to us because of what it represents, in that it's the only place where families can come together and be a family once again. Now, to us, it's very important that we maintain that spirit and that we continue to work with Border Patrol to open Friendship Park to those visits, as we feel that that is the only way at the time being until immigration laws can be more just for families to remain together, to be a family, even if it's just for a few hours during the weekends. It's very important, and you know, we feel that the friendship that has developed over the years between our two great countries, our two great communities, are actually contributing to a better safety of our border. You know, as you have been seeing in the news lately, we've had several situations where pangas have been crossing over to the U.S. And unfortunately, there's been some accidents that have left several migrants dead. By actually allowing people to visit during the weekends, this actually helps people to motivate and to remain in faith, to continue to be a family and not take the risk of trying to reunite with their families by taking that perilous journey through the sea or through the hills that we have seen that have caused so much death and so much grief. To us here at Friendship Park, this land is considered sacred land because of what it represents for our families to be a family, at least during the weekends.
Thank you, Robert. I'm going to go on. We're going to jump back up to the third location, the garden, where Dan is going to tell us a little bit about the third location we consider an essential part of Friendship Park, the Binational Garden.
Great, thank you, Robert. Thank you, John. I'm here right where the monument there is in the distance, you can see, and the wall is covered with a mesh all the way till this point. And then from this point on, there's no mesh. So throughout the years, Border Patrol has kind of changed the rules as far as the way access works. In general, they've been pretty consistent about allowing at least 10 people to the monument from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And at some points, they have allowed people to come to this area where they can see each other better, but they make people stand at a distance. So that gives people kind of two options, two not very attractive options, where you can see your family from a distance of 10 feet very clearly, or you can go up to the mesh where it's hard to, you have to kind of decide whether you want to look at their eyes or look at their mouth, but you can come up close. So a lot of people during the times when they allowed people to come out to this area would come out here to get a picture with their family, and then they go back over to the mesh to have a more intimate conversation. And and so I'm walking east right now towards the Binational Friendship Garden of native plants, and the garden was planted back in 2007, March of 2007, so it's over 14 years old now, and it was a community project through a project called Border Encuentro, where we'd look for common interest themes on both sides of the border, and under those common interest themes, do an event. Like we did yoga classes, John mentioned that, and poetry readings, and salsa dancing lessons, and the Binational Garden was one of those Border Encuentro events. And the idea of the Binational Garden is to create a space where people can make friends through the fence, kind of like micro version of the park itself. And the other kind of purpose of the garden is to promote native flora. So they're all native plants, and the design are circles. And so you can maybe make out these tires here on the Mexican side that create a half circle. And then the tires continue, or the half circle continues onto the US side to make a full circle. And That kind of goes with the theme of the park in general. Around the monument, there's a cement plaza, a circular plaza. And so in general, we're sending the message of circles that, that cut through the walls, you could say. And we have 3 binational circles. And the last circle is has a theme of, we call it a wish garden. And we call it a wish garden because people write wishes on rocks. So you have a kind of a binational pathway here with all kinds of messages and wishes on rocks that people have written. And and so a little bit of history about the garden. Like I said, it started in 2007. When it first started, it was just a small rectangular garden, and then little by little we were able to expand it to this circular design by 2012. And from that point on, the access was extremely limited on the US side. When we first planted it, like I said, there was just this chain link fence here. So people could come on both sides. That's when families could come on both sides anytime during the day. And there were holes in the wall. You could pass food, we could pass tools, we could pass plants, and just kind of do an outing at the garden. You can come to either side. Once the walls came in, things became extremely controlled. And so even though we were allowed to expand it to make the circle design, we had to get permission to come in and come in small groups. And we managed to keep the garden and made kind of agreement, you could say, or at least Border Patrol ceded to the idea that the garden could still exist. And we had an agreement that we were allowed to access it at certain points for maintenance and do short tours for visitors, and families could come out and stay for a short amount of time. Although that varied too. Sometimes it was a long amount of time during the whole time that the park was open. And then just out of the blue, in January of last year, I came out here just to do some regular maintenance on the Mexican side, and the whole garden was gone on the US side. It was just it had completely disappeared. And a friend of mine had taken some pictures, and sure enough, Border Patrol had come in with bulldozers and just razed the whole thing to the ground. They took up 100 and something odd native plants, a 500-pound bench, an informational sign, heavy duty sign, high quality signs, all the pathways. That just made the whole thing disappear. And so that of course was extremely tragic for the community in general. And the good thing that came out of it, I could say, is that the community reacted. There was an outpouring of support, and that in turn created a reaction from Border Patrol and let us come back in and replant. So we were allowed to come back in and partially replant the garden. So the garden's about maybe 40–50% of what it was on the US side. And so that's why if you look at I'll kind of put my camera through the fence here, and you can kind of see the plants are a lot smaller on the US side.
Yeah, Aida's got that. Aida's got that, Dan. Yep.
Okay, cool. Good. And then they are on the Mexican side here. This plant, for example, is a toyan bush. The toyans live 500 years, and so this particular toyan is actually 14 years old. It's one of the plants that was planted in the original planting. And yeah, in general, like I said, it's all native plants.
Thanks, Dan. I'm going to go ahead and jump to next steps as we want to honor our people's time here. Our goal is to finish at 1 o'clock. I've invited people to place questions in the chat, but let me just emphasize, as Robert and Dan are going to head back to the monument, and they'll be glad to answer questions you may have for them there. But just to emphasize that there are really 2 upcoming advocacy efforts that we're engaged in. One is we had been given every reason to believe that Friendship Park, the meeting place at the wall, would reopen once the surrounding California State Park was reopened to the public. The Border Field State Park is a state park in the state of California. There are only 11 state parks out of almost 300 in the entire state that were entirely closed during the period of COVID. Border Field was one of those, even to pedestrians. But Border Field State Park is now reopened to pedestrians, and we're advocating that San Diego Border Patrol, as they indicated they would do, should now reopen the Binational meeting place, which is on federal property. The last several weekends, people have not been able to meet up with families and friends. And so what several of us have done is we've been going out to bear witness to the fact that the park is closed and to kind of stand up and represent some of the families that depend on this place. I want to encourage you, if you're able to join us, well, any Sunday, but especially I want to encourage you to join us on Sunday, June 13th, when we'll be engaged in what's called a Marcha de Silencio, in which we'll be approaching the border line, the federal property line, and representing families that are the kinds of families who depend on this place to visit with loved ones. Here's just a glimpse of a little bit of what a Marcha de Silencio would look like. I thought you might want to just get a flavor and feel for what you'd be invited to do if you join us on Sunday, June 13th. So you can see that we're hiking to the meetup place that we can't go on federal property, and holding pictures of the families, the kinds of families that visit Friendship Park, in hopes that Border Patrol will soon reopen the park and families like these can once again gather with their loved ones. The meetup for those Marchas de Silencio are Sundays at the exterior parking lot to Border Field State Park. The address is on the event there on Facebook, and we can send it around. It's 1250 Monument Road. And it's about a 3-mile hike round trip on level ground, but does include some hiking on the sand on the beach, as you saw. I also want to encourage you to look ahead with us to the 50th anniversary of Friendship Park. It was on August 18th, 1971, that First Lady Pat Nixon dedicated and inaugurated the surrounding area as California's Borderfield State Park. And as Dan mentioned, on that occasion, there was just barbed wire on the fence. She actually had her security detail cut the barbed wire so that she could greet the crowd that was assembled on the Mexican side. A remarkable display of solidarity with the people of Mexico from a sitting First Lady of the United States. And let me just show you a 23-second glimpse of what that looked like. This is the sitting First Lady of the United States arriving at the US-Mexico border. And this is how she chose to demonstrate her affection for the people of Mexico.
A new park at Borderfield, California is cause for a visit to another country. A fence separates the Mexican people just a few feet away, but they extend their welcome and she extends hers.
I'm going to come around. We don't want to get offended.
Pat orders the fence taken down then and there.
I don't know if you could hear that, but what she said was, we don't want to let a fence get in the way. And she had her security detail cut the barbed wire and walked into Mexico. She also said, I hope there won't be a fence too long here. And I hope that someday we'll do as well on our side of the park as they have done on theirs. So it's really that vision that we are proposing to renew with the 50th anniversary commemorations in August. And on that occasion, we'll also be revealing to the public a grand design, a conceptual design of how a binational park could truly work at this location. That campaign of ours is called Build That Park. You can learn more at buildthatpark.org. And our architect friend Jim Brown is receiving submissions into design competitions from architects in both countries. And he's going to be compiling a composite vision of how a truly binational park would work at this location. That may seem fantastical to you, but let me tell you, there are several such binational parks on the US-Canada border. The Department of Homeland Security knows how to manage binational space. And at the Peace Arch Park in Vancouver, Washington, and Vancouver, British Columbia, for instance, people enter to a shared space and then exit in an orderly fashion. Many of us are familiar with the Cross-Border X, the parking lot and terminal that's in the United States that allows people access to the Tijuana airport. This is a solvable problem, and our intent with the Build That Park campaign is to share some conceptual ideas that we hope will then inspire elected officials, up to and including the President of the United States, to create a binational park on the US-Mexico border to realize the original vision of Friendship Park and to fulfill the intended purpose of this historic meeting place. So you'll hear much more about that August 18 to 22nd, with Sunday, August 22nd, is the plan to convene a gathering of leading officials and the public from both San Diego and Tijuana on site at Friendship Park.